You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I gotta go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Advisory Committee on Accessibility in the HRM. The meeting is called to order at 4:11 p.m., April 25th, 2022. I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'd like to do roll call, please. Elizabeth?
Vice Chair Elizabeth has not yet joined the meeting.
Okay. Let's see, next, Nicole.
I'm here.
Rochelle?
Vice Chair Rochelle will not be joining us today.
Thank you.
No, I'm here.
Oh, hello, Rochelle.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, I'm here. Yes, right
All
here.
right, thank you. Councillor Russell?
Good
Council.
afternoon from the shores of First Lake.
Thank you. Councillor Dago Gammon?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, colleagues and staff.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome 3 new members to the committee and invite each member to introduce themselves for their AV check. Jordan Waterbury.
Hello, I'm Jordan Waterbury, and
Hello,
I'm
Jordan.
in Halifax, West Armdale.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Christine Hemming.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Hemming, and I live over in Woodlawn.
Welcome, Kristen. Michelle Mahoney.
Hi, sorry, I am here. I am Michelle Mahoney. I live in Lucasville, Nova Scotia.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. And I must apologize. My head keeps going up and down because I'm using 2 devices here. So I'm not ignoring folks. It's just I'm not savvy enough to have the dual screens up. Anyhow, are there any changes the committee wish to make to the minutes? We're doing approval of the minutes.
I would move the approval of the minutes of February 28th, 2022.
All those in favor? And I
We,
will raise your
we
hand.
do need a seconder.
I can
Thank you.
second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's why I'm vice chair, see, as opposed to
It's all
chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the order of business?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The clerk's office did not receive notification of additions or deletions for today's meeting.
Thank you. A motion to approve the order of business, please.
So
So
moved.
moved. Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Passed. Thank you. So we're going to now call for a declaration of conflict of interest. Is there anyone on the committee that would like to declare a conflict? Having no declarations of interest, the meeting will proceed. Number 6 on the agenda, consideration of deferred business. We have none. Correspondence, petitions, delegations. Are there any correspondence that has come in?
Thank you, Vice Chair. The clerk's office did not receive any petitions or correspondence for this meeting.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 7, presentations. Any information items brought forward? We have none. Okay, we have presentations and reports. Siobhan, could you please introduce the presenters? Ryan McNeil, Juniper Littlefield from Upland Studio.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of Accessibility Advisory Committee. We're very pleased to be with you today to present and get your feedback on a project that we have underway. My name is Siobhan Witherby. I'm an active transportation planner with HRM. So I help to make it safer, more comfortable and connected for people to walk, roll, cycle in the community. I've been working in the past on our Halifax bike map pamphlet. This is our large version that we have for the entire municipality. We've recently initiated a project within our team, myself and my colleague, Chloe Kennedy, who's also on the call, to come up with a smaller, more pocket-sized bike map that's a bit more portable. The bike map that we're working on is meant to focus on the regional center, where we have been developing all ages and abilities cycling facilities. So we have hired consultants at Upland to help us to do some stakeholder engagement and come up with the design for this map. And we're really curious to get your perspective on how best to present this information with an accessibility lens. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our consultants, Juniper Littlefield and Ryan McLean, to take us through the presentation, and we'll have a discussion period afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan. So I have some slides here. I'll just wait till they come up, but I'm Juniper Littlefield, so I work with Upland Planning and Design, and my colleague Ryan McLean is here as well. So we've been working with Siobhan and Chloe on this project for HRM, and I'll just give you a sort of a brief introduction to the project and show you some examples of other bike maps we've been looking at, and then I'll just open it up to the committee for discussion. So yeah, I think Siobhan already gave a good introduction to start with. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just walk you through some of the objectives of the project. So like was already said, this is a project to develop a more portable bike map. And this one will be for the extent of Halifax Peninsula and downtown Dartmouth, or what's also known as the regional center. So it's sort of a smaller extent than the regional bike map that we already have in HRM. And it's intended to direct any map readers to the all ages and abilities cycling facilities that we have. So bike lanes and shared roads and all of that stuff, as well as multimodal connections to transit and other transportation options, connect them to amenities like bike parking and those fix-it stations that are on the side of the road, key destinations like schools and parks and that sort of thing. And then it'll also include some information related to safety and other resources for cyclists. And here's an example at the bottom there. That's the Cincinnati bike map. So sort of a similar size to what we're aiming for. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief timeline of the project. You can see here we started the project in March of this year. So we began with some data collection before we launched the project with an internal stakeholder focus group. So we spoke with several members of HRM staff to start looking at what we want this map to achieve and sort of who will be using it and what's the key information that it needs to include. And then this month, we've done another external stakeholder focus group. So that one was mainly local cycling advocates and representatives of different cycling organizations. Last week, we had a presentation to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. And then this presentation right now is the last piece of that initial engagement. So we'll be releasing sort of a summary report of what we've heard from folks so far. And that will be available later this month. before we get into drafting the bike map itself. So there will be another opportunity to provide some feedback if you're interested once we've completed a draft version of that pocket bike map. And we're aiming to have that printed in June so that it can get distributed to folks as they're sort of starting to cycle again once the weather gets warmer this year. And next slide, please. So just some context. These are a few of the municipal plans and strategies that we've reviewed in this work and have sort of helped to guide our goals for the project. So we looked at the active transportation priorities plan, the integrated mobility plan. There's a screenshot from that here below. So that's sort of laid out the process that the municipality is following for developing these new bicycle facilities. And then, of course, the Halifax accessibility strategy, which was completed last year. So those are three of sort of our guiding documents. And next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk through a few examples, like I said, of different bike maps. The first couple are from Halifax, so you may have already seen them before. This one that you see here is the Halifax online bike map. So this is different from what we're working on. This is only an online map. You can see it shows existing bicycle infrastructure that's sort of been color coded. So there's different route types. We have multi-use pathways, protected bike lanes, which would be sort of physically separated from vehicles. And then we've got painted bike lanes, local street bikeways, which would be those shared roads where cyclists are, where they're sort of safer for cyclists, but you'd still be sharing a road with a vehicle. And then we've also got paved shoulders where those are just sort of similar to a painted bike lane, but without the pavement markings. And then at the bottom there are also some suggested routes. So these are roads without dedicated bicycle infrastructure that have been identified as good cycling routes because of typically it's related to low traffic volumes and low speed limits. And then the map also shows a few amenities as well. So you can see here there's public washrooms are identified. And if you zoom in a bit, you can also see the bike repair stations, like I mentioned earlier. So that's the online bike map. And then on the next slide, we have the paper bike map, which Siobhan was showing us earlier. So this is a zoomed in sort of screenshot of it. It covers a much larger area since it's the whole municipality, but this is a little bit wider than the regional center. So the area in the middle is sort of what we'll be focusing on for this project. Dartmouth within the circumferential highway, and then Peninsula Halifax as well. So in this version, it's pretty similar to the online one. We have different route types that have been classified the same way and color coded. And then there's a bit more information in terms of the destinations and amenities. So we also have bike dirt jumps have been identified here, Halifax recreation facilities and public libraries. There are some commercial areas labeled sort of generally. And then we also have transit terminals, bike lockers, and some helpful information like areas where cyclists should use caution, areas where bikes are not permitted, one-way streets, that sort of thing. Steep slopes is also noted here. So there's a lot more going on this one, but essentially the same sort of basic information. And then next slide. So I'm just going to go through a couple examples from elsewhere. These are both actually from the States, I believe. And the first one is the Salt Lake City bike map. So these are also paper bike maps. I'm just showing you sort of a small snippet of them, but they are both formatted to be a similar size to that pocket bike map that we're aiming for. So the main difference I wanted to point out in this one is that you can see in the legend in the corner here, they've classified the routes by comfort level rather than by facility type. So on the next page, I'll show you sort of how they came up with these ratings, but we've got high comfort. Oh, sorry, back to the last slide for a minute. I'm just want to walk through the map a little bit. Yeah, so we've got high comfort in green, medium comfort is in a lighter green color, and then there's low and very low comfort levels. So you can sort of select your route on the map based on maybe your skill as a cyclist or whether you're riding with your children or all of these different factors. So that sort of helps you make those decisions. And then it also has different transit routes, contour lines, and there's a few insets in the map where there's areas. I think the one on the top here is the University of Utah. So where there's sort of dense areas where there's a lot of information that they want to convey. Yeah, so next slide, I'll walk through some of the additional information they've provided. So the left here shows, like I mentioned, the comfort ratings are sort of broken down and defined. So high comfort, they've assigned to off-road trails as well as on-road lanes that have that physical separation from traffic, just like some of the ones that have been going up in Halifax recently. So that would be like the South Park Street bike lane, where it has that separation. And then also streets with low vehicle speeds and volumes are also in their higher comfort rating. In the medium category, they have painted bike lanes, as well as shared lanes that have sort of slower travel speeds. And then in the extremely low routes, these are routes that are not necessarily recommended for bicycle travel, bike lanes or paved shoulders on really busy streets where it would be a bit more dangerous for cyclists to be traveling. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways of showing facilities on bike maps, and this is just one interesting example I wanted to highlight. And then they've also included a bunch of additional information. I just pulled a few here, but alongside the map itself, they've shown other key information for cyclists, focusing on sort of what you need to know as you're taking a bike trip, especially if you're new to biking or new to the city. So there's information on what to do if you're involved in a crash and who to call. They have links to a few resources, both for the city as well as more general cycling resources. And then they've sort of broken down key information about how to maintain your bike as well as the accessories that you might need. So they've got bike bells and bike lights, and which are required by law as well. And next slide. So this is the next example I wanted to walk through. This one's from New York City. So because it's quite a large city, obviously there's a lot of information on this map, and it's a fairly different context than we're dealing with in Halifax, but there's a lot of really interesting choices that they made on this map. So at the top left here, they've got a scale, and you can see it's broken down by miles, kilometers, as well as minutes. So you can sort of pick which measurement means more to you and see your travel time based on that. They've also got a legend where they show each facility type. So this one, similar to the HRM bike map, has been broken down by route type. So they have bike lanes, protected bike lanes, as well as those painted conventional bike lanes, and then signed routes and shared lanes. And they've actually included photos of all of those, so you can sort of get a visual. And if you're not familiar with that jargon, you can identify what those different types of facilities are and which would maybe be more comfortable for you. They've also identified areas on the map where you need to walk your bike, areas where they have lights timed for bicycles, as well as potential future bike routes, and then some other route types to be aware of, like cobblestone streets or dirt paths that might not work for some cyclists. And I guess the last piece I should highlight too is they have a bike share company in New York City. So they've provided a bit of information on that if people need to go to that site to find out more information, they've got that link there. And then, yeah, I guess just looking at this map, there's also a few labels included directly on the map with a bit of text where they need more information. So where there's a bridge that has certain open hours, for example, or where there's maybe a set of stairs that you'd have to navigate, and that sort of information that would be relevant for cyclists. And next slide, please. So I just pulled one example from the many sort of insets they've got on this map, but this one shows you how to navigate different intersections as a cyclist. So they've sort of selected 3 key intersection types or situations that would be maybe challenging to cyclists, or where they might not be familiar to people that are new to the city. So we've got mixing zones, areas where you might be placed in a truck's blind spot, and then offset crossings where there's that bicycle crossing pavement markings. So they've broken down the do's and don'ts of each intersection type and offered a bit more text. They've provided it in several different languages. So that's one example of the sort of information that we're considering providing in our own bike map. And next slide, please. So the other thing I wanted to point out is we've developed sort of an interactive online map for this engagement. So if any of you are interested, there is a link in this slideshow. I'm not sure if you all have access to that, but we can provide a link if not. And there's instructions on the map itself, so it's pretty easy to use, but this is just a screenshot from it here at the bottom. So the map shows you the various existing bicycle infrastructure in Halifax, and you can see this is the extent that we're focused on in this Pocket Bike Map project. So it shows you all the different bicycle routes that already exist, and lets you also mark out your own suggested route. So if you cycle and there's a road you like to take to work or to school or what have you, and it might not have that dedicated bicycle infrastructure, but you can mark that down, and that's something we'll be using as we develop the map. It also lets you sort of drop a pin on the map and locate where there's a challenging area or a hazard. If there's key destinations or amenities you think we should be including on the map. So this is another piece of the engagement that we've been doing, and we've got some really great comments so far on this. So it'll be open for the next few days if anyone's interested. I think Ryan just dropped the link in the chat. And we'll have sort of another version of this available once the draft bike map is completed as well. So yeah, we invite you all to check that out if you're interested. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk through a few sort of guiding questions about these, just sort of indicate some of the decisions we're making as we design this bike map. And if anyone has comments about any of these after the presentation, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So the first category we're looking at is the design of the map itself. So we've been talking to folks about how they'd like to see their routes classified. So we showed a couple examples earlier, looking at the different facility types there are in Halifax, as well as different comfort levels or safety levels or whatever you'd like to call it. But those certainly aren't the only options too. If anyone has other ideas, we'd love to hear it. And then we're also wanting to hear what obstacles should be included on the map. So one example we heard earlier was around accessibility concerns like these chicanes that you see on the Dartmouth waterfront. I'm not sure if anyone's encountered these before, but that can be an issue for some cyclists, particularly if you've got a different kind of bike, like if you're riding a tricycle or a fat bike, or if you have a trailer on the back. So things like that, we would like to identify on the map if it's useful for folks. Next slide, please.
And to the presenter, this is the committee clerk. I just wanted to note that we've gone over the 10-minute mark. So if you wouldn't mind going through the next few slides with a bit of expediency, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I've only got a couple left. So, and then the other piece we're looking at is educational information that's included on the map. So here's another example down below from the New York City bike map, where they show different laws and etiquettes around cycling, and they've illustrated them all in graphics. So particularly, we'd like to know what accessibility information it would be useful to include. So if there's unique info that people who are using adapted bikes or e-bikes or anything like that need to know, that would be something that we're looking at, as well as what etiquette and rules we should outline for people. Next slide, please. So the last thing we're looking at is the format of the map. So Siobhan touched on this earlier, but there's different options for the size of the map. We know that we want it to be a little bit more portable, but we also have to balance that with the legibility of the map as well. So we want it to be usable while being convenient for people to carry around with them. And then I guess something else I'll just point out quickly too is we're looking at how the different maps will be used. So we've got this paper version as well as the online version, which will be updated with some of this information once we've completed the project. And particularly a question that's come up in other engagements is how people with low vision are going to use this paper bike map versus the online version. And next slide, please. So just quickly to review, this is sort of our last piece of public engagement before we complete the map. So we'll be sharing that summary report soon. And then the draft pocket bike map will be available for comment as well. And next slide, I think, is the last one. So I'll just highlight our contact information here if anyone wants to offer comments after this meeting. If you think of anything later on, you can reach Siobhan at withers@halifax.ca or me. My email is juniper@uplandstudio.ca. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for your time. Sorry for going a bit over there. And I'll pass it back to the committee. If anyone has any questions or comments, we're here to answer.
If I may, Madam Vice Chair, I am now here. So if you would like to pass the chair baton to me, I would be willing to take that and continue the rest of the meeting.
Jackie, you're muted.
I'm showing.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll now pass it over to the chair.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that presentation. Having seen it last week, I can assure you that this project is definitely interesting. All right. I will go through the list that I have, and I will look among the panelists to see who is here and not here. So I do not see Liz's name. Is Liz here?
Mr. Chair, Liz, oh yes, Liz has joined us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm actually late. I was in another meeting, so I missed the presentation. So I'm just arriving now.
Okay, so I will proceed on to Nicole. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jackie, do you have any questions?
More comment, Mr. Chair, thank you. I guess when I look at the map, as much as I can see, it's all very, very good information. But as a driver, I find sometimes it's quite confusing as new routes come online and what do things mean. So I guess my comment is that possibly at some point, some public information for drivers can be posted or forwarded so that I'm doing what I should be doing, because I'm sure there's been times that I haven't been quite the way I should be driving. So I just kind of pass that on and what some of these things mean, and it may help with some of the public drivers as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Sure that I'm getting it right.
I'm able to jump in and respond. Thank you, Vice Chair. That's a good suggestion. And I feel like, yeah, alongside this pocket bike map we're developing, developing educational materials for drivers is a big component of that. So I think that's sort of our next frontier, whether it's information on the online website that gets pushed out as like Facebook, PSA, social media type stuff to educate all types of road users, like people who are walking to, people who are driving, people who are taking transit, how to kind of get around with the new facilities is a great idea, and it's kind of on our radar coming up soon, I think.
Okay. Rochelle, do you have any comments or questions?
I was just wondering about, is there any way to put up signage so that people riding bikes don't ride on the sidewalks? You know, I think that that's a really big issue here in the city.
Maybe I'll let Siobhan answer that.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. That's a good point. I feel like that is a bit more of an educational component as well. It might be a little bit challenging to put signs on the sidewalks everywhere. But yeah, kind of alongside, as the city grows a little bit more and invests more in the cycling infrastructure, you need to kind of differentiate where the bikes can be and where they shouldn't be. I know you can cycle on the sidewalk if you're younger and learning to bike, but yeah, keeping people off of the sidewalks to give that space to people walking and rolling, and where there are dedicated facilities, more and more, just having that space for them to go, and pushing that educational component, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's great, the bike lanes that have really come up. I worked from home for almost 2 years because of the pandemic, and I actually took a course with Juniper. So it's nice to see you again, Juniper. I work at Dalhousie, so the bike lanes on campus are just, they're so great, and it's nice to see so much of that appearing in the city, in the downtown area too, because it you know, sometimes bikers and drivers can you know, almost collide, right? So I really do like that feature. Unfortunately, when, you know, it's a whole other conversation, whole other meeting probably, but you know, sometimes I have walked in the bike lane because it's safer than the sidewalk. Again, whole other meeting, whole other conversation.
Thanks for that comment, Michelle, and it's really nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Just based on what you said, I'm thinking another thing we can consider in terms of the educational information we're including in the map itself too is where bikes are allowed, so cyclists know what ages are allowed on the sidewalk and where you're allowed to be as a cyclist, because it does change in every city. So I think that's a really important piece of information to note. So thank you.
Okay. Rochelle Manette, is that correct? Manette?
Mr. Chair, Rochelle is not with us today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I found this presentation to be interesting. We are at the Accessibility Committee talking about using and navigating a bike map, and I'm struggling a little bit with trying to understand, I guess, where the facility would be. So this map would be anticipated to be used by everyone regardless of their ability?
Yeah, so it's a bike map intended for the use of any cyclist, really, and that could include people who have never cycled before and are just considering getting into it, or it could be used by more experienced cyclists, but really our target audience would be people that are new to cycling and people that are new to Halifax as well. So.
Just building on what Juniper was saying, yeah, making sure that whatever map product we produce includes information for people who are cycling of all kind of ranges of abilities, if there are particular needs associated with adaptive bicycles and kind of fitting through different infrastructure or other sort of information that we might want to convey in this document to make sure that everyone can interpret and use it for their route planning as much as possible. That's what we'd love to hear kind of from the committee, specifically around accessibility and, yeah, making sure that it's available and accessible for all. Also, like thinking about who might be accessing and kind of reading the bike map document in terms of the sizing and things. Sorry, did I interrupt Chloe, who was going to jump in?
No, I think I was going to say the exact same thing about it's also intended to be used by folks with visual impairments. Yes, we're looking at color schemes as well that could be for partially sighted people or people experiencing color blindness. Also font size, as I think Siobhan, you were just about to say, for the bike map.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Diego Gammon, do you have anything to contribute?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So this is really, it's just the regional center. So I'm curious about, is there a thought to expand this beyond the regional center? I live in one of the most popular cycling routes through the Waverley Road and down Fall River across Windsor Junction. And I really want to see, in terms of formatting, say danger, you're taking your life in your hands to cycle on really small, narrow roads. So when we're talking about how are you coding it, I'd say high danger, don't go near it. You know, there's a lot of concern that I have around cycling outside of the regional center to be true. So I'm curious about where it may grow to. In terms of the book itself, I agree with some previous comments just around cycling etiquette. Even though cyclists that are in the regional center cycling are probably very good, but I don't think it hurts to have some bold front and center stuff around cycling etiquette to protect people. I can see true colors, I can't see shades. So when I look at a map like this, it's almost a little bit of a sensory overload. I'm wondering on the online map, is there a way to localize? Like, can I click on the map and only see the routes that are on paved shoulders, or can I only see the routes? Like, to see all of that at once is a lot. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that it can be sort of delayered, if that makes any sense, especially the online map, because you think about those options a little bit. The other comment that I might make, it is about the size of the printed map. I do know that you want to be careful and keep it pocket sized, but sometimes pocket sized, when you've got that much information in a space, I just think it could be challenging. If somebody's going to stop to look at a printed map, I think they're going to stop their bike, right? They're going to sit, they're going to take a moment, and they're going to look at it. So they're pulling it out of a knapsack. I just think that I wouldn't be as considerate about or as worried about pocket size as I would be about the ability to actually be able to read it and see it well. So yeah, so those are my comments. I think, yeah, like I said, it's awesome to be able to have that, but it is very, very busy.
I appreciate those comments. I'm just going to jump in and respond to a few of those. I think that's a great point about etiquette that everyone's raised so far, and that's definitely something we're going to be looking at and trying to sort of balance the right amount of information in terms of rules of the road, as well as just those sort of helpful tips, like you mentioned. Looking at the online bike map, you are able to select sort of what you're able to see. So hopefully that answers your question there. And then around the sort of scope of the project. So this is specifically for the regional center, like you said, but we do have the regional bike map paper version, which shows the full municipality, as well as the online map where you can sort of zoom to the extent you're interested in. And I'm not sure if HRM has plans to develop any other sort of paper products. I'll let Siobhan speak to that, but thank you again for your comment.
Thank you, Councillor. I think about this was developed, I think in 2014, the original version, and we've been updating with a few more lines as we built out the network. We know that it needs to be updated, but we started with this first frontier in the regional center where we have the highest density of our kind of cycling facilities and probably highest numbers of people kind of doing active commuting trips. We'll kind of use this sort of engagement and this little pilot pocket bike map as a way to kind of influence this as it gets updated, to expand sort of our symbology and the way, the educational materials and the way that we approach and symbolize the cycling infrastructure to the rest of the municipality. So we will update this and kind of the Waverley Road and all the areas around that you were talking about, and it will be reflected in this bigger one. That is a little bit further down the line after we print this document, but I agree, there's people, a lot more people cycling, not just in the regional center. It needs to apply to the rest of the municipality. I will say with the online bike map, Juniper was saying you can kind of click some things on and off. I think it is grouped. I'd need to double check. So you can turn on and off sort of the existing cycling infrastructure, which is 4 or 5 colors and line routes, and the suggested infrastructure, which is I think 2 routes. So I'm going to take that back to sort of our ICT folks and see if we can split it out all the way. If you just want to look at multi-use pathways, or you just want to look at local street bikeways or suggested cycling routes on local roads, because I appreciate that comment about kind of it being overwhelming and there being a lot of routes on there, and kind of focusing in exactly on what you want to see on those maps. So that's a takeaway for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Jordan, do you have anything to contribute?
I do, yes. My suggestions based on the presentation or comments, I think most people have actually covered a lot of what I wrote down, which is great. I would echo a lot of the same comments, especially about it, and I'm going to make a comment that it seems to be a rural, suburban, urban, not a divide, but a different way of doing things. I actually originally lived in Wolfville and Kentville, which are both, developing active transportation too, but in a more town country kind of way. And one thing that Wolfville did do when I lived there as a student was putting up signs about you're respecting other sidewalk users and that you shouldn't bike there. But I mean, that's much easier to do in a small town with one main street than in a large city like Halifax. And as well, I know that the Kentville Police Service used to also do bicycle etiquette and training for citizens to learn how to respect the rules and kind of see how they can cycle properly. But the main thing that I thought when I looked at the online map, and I have it up on my other screen here, it as a neurodivergent person with autism, it seems very crowded. And I think that Councillor Daigle Gammon had some really great points to make about how she felt about the map, and I could echo a lot of that because with my autism, it's just like I'm not even going to look at it because it's too crowded. And I do actually work in ICT as well in my day job, so I know that this kind of can happen, and if you could bring it back to your ICT team, that would be great. And I think something that I was reminded of when you talked about that, Siobhan, was when I look at the on a map about snow clearing, I can kind of zoom in to where I live and say, okay, the sidewalks here are going to be plowed at this time and so on and so forth. So something similar to that really was what I was interested about in seeing like what, based on someone's comfort level or the facilities, how we could kind of query different things in the map. That would be my one thing to make it less, online, less overwhelming for someone who's neurodivergent, who has, a visual impairment. But otherwise, everyone's echoed a lot of what I said and or was thinking, sorry. And I think that's, I think it's a great start. But again, a pocket size would be more overwhelming than than the large one for sure. But yeah, large prints I think would be great.
Yeah, that's a lot of what you touched on is sort of some of the key challenges we've been having with this design for sure. And I think the main thing we're focused on right now is really balancing the information to avoid overwhelming readers, like you said. And that'll be something that's really important for us to look at in the engagement we do on the draft version as well. So if any of you are interested in checking out the draft copy, once we do that, we'll have paper versions and online versions available. So it would be great to get some feedback on that and see if we've sort of done a good job of balancing that information. We'd also like to include some links to other resources. So I think you mentioned the education around cycling that they had in Kentville, I believe. So there are a few organizations in Halifax offering cycling courses and things like that. So that's an opportunity for us to direct people to those resources as well. So thank you for your comments.
And jumping in to build on what Juniper was saying, which is all great, to try and further simplify it in terms of the educational information while still making sure it's available, we're investigating the possibility of doing like a little QR code on the map so that you could kind of link to more resources on your phone, and it won't be as kind of available and in your face on this paper map. We can free up that space and have it be a little bit more clean looking, but we'll have some more of that etiquette at the QR link, and you could watch the videos or access the resources that way too. And hopefully it could be more clean that way.
Okay. Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
I do, and Councillor Deagle-Gamet, I grew up on the Waverley Road on the narrow part, so I can 100% appreciate your perspective on that. I did want to echo, and I think it was brought up, just the color blindness. So, the red, blue, blue, yellow, just kind of being aware. The other thing that kind of came up for me is knowing the terrain type. So whether it's dirt, paved, loose gravel, because for me, I use a wheelchair, so I always have wheels on me. If I want to go with my friend who's biking, I need to know what I'm in for, and I'll choose a different path based off of what the terrain is. So that would be very helpful. Incline would be a dream, but I know that's almost impossible to go out and be like, okay, this route has a max incline of 5 degrees. Understand, but that would be a wish. The only other thing, and it was in the presentation that I did actually really like, was the photo example of the route type. Because for me, like, comfort's subjective. So I might be really comfortable, driving on the road versus a protected bike lane for whatever reason. So I think the photos, for me at least, would be just a bit clearer, because again, someone might be comfortable in something that I'm totally uncomfortable with, and there was a bit of a divide there for me. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I think again, it is hard to fit so much information on something small, but you're definitely heading down the right track, I think.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I think you actually pointed out a lot of the information that we've got on our list already. So it's good to hear that we're headed in the right direction. I think slopes is definitely something we'd like to include if we can sort of cram it on there. And looking at different surfacing types is something else you mentioned. So we're sort of focused on road routes in this map in particular, but we will be sort of pinpointing different trailheads where they exist within the regional center. So maybe that's a piece of information we could have even in a label on the map showing the surfacing of each of those facilities. So I think that's a good thing to think about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about in terms of slope on our big bike map pamphlet, we have sort of a single arrow for, I think it's between 5 and 8%, and a double arrow for anything over 8%. I don't know if those thresholds work for you, if you'd like to see it shifted in any way, or what the most important numbers might be for someone in a wheelchair. But yeah, that's a consideration, and we're trying to figure out if that's the way we want to go or adapt it in any sort of way to be the most meaningful for people.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have made it through the questions and answer session. So I'd like to thank Jennifer and Siobhan for your presentation. And we certainly have a lot to think about.
Hi, this is Elizabeth. Sorry, I was waiting to go through the list and I haven't had a chance to comment. Can I do that now?
Yes, I believe you can. Yep.
Yeah, when you first called my name, I had just arrived, so I hadn't had a moment to sort of settle in. But now that I hear other people's comments, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of what I was agreeing with and what I felt, was making sense to me, or feedback that I think that I would be discussing as well.
Sure.
I think it'd be great if we had the inclines so that people are able to know how much of an incline there is on different areas. I think that would be fantastic. I think it would also be great to know what the surfaces are as well. Particularly if it's not just for biking, but if people are out walking. If you have a senior who's out walking, they may be fine on a paved path, but they may not be as fine on a gravel path or a dirt path. I think for seniors and other people with mobility issues, and also maybe for people in wheelchairs. So will your map be applying to those individuals as well, or solely for cyclists?
So we are targeting cyclists with this map, but I think that's an interesting point people have made about slope too, that's information that could be used not only for people on bikes, but any modes really that are traveling on these roads. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It'd be nice to have that information sort of specific to those individuals, because I think you'll be finding anyone will be using your maps who want to be out sort of not in a vehicle, but moving around on their own. So, and myself, I get out walking quite a bit, but I have a real issue with doing any sort of incline of walking on any side of incline. And I would also have to have sort of a flatter surface as well. And it'd be nice if you were able to do the walking pass or the biking pass and have them go to beaches. I'm wondering if you have beaches that are included on your maps as well as destinations.
Yes, we have been thinking about beaches. I think that's another great point, and that sounds like slope is a big priority. So really good feedback. Thank you.
And I was also, sorry, just one more thing, wondering about kilometers as well, or distances on your mapping as well.
Yes, they will be.
I'll jump in and build on that.
And if I could make another comment, I was curious if these biking paths are through forested areas as well.
So the map will be showing on-road routes, but we will be including sort of pins where there's trails within the regional center. So anywhere on the Halifax Peninsula or Dartmouth within the circumferential highway, if there is a trail, we want to pinpoint those. So it won't show the full trail route because we're focused on those, the roads themselves, but we do want to be able to direct people to the trailheads as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I missed the first part of the presentation, so I wasn't sure what all you spoke to. So those are just a few things that were kind of popping around in my head after hearing other people's comments. I think specifically for me, those the inclines and the actual texture of the surfaces that would be my two biggest pieces of feedback.
That's awesome. Thank you, Liz. Siobhan, did you have something to add to that?
Oh yeah, I was going to jump in quickly to talk about the distances on the map. We can definitely include distance. If you think that some other of the map examples that Juniper was showing showed sort of a walking and a cycling distance in minutes instead of in kilometers, which is something that we could consider showing. I know it might range based on kind of the abilities of folks who might be walking or cycling, but if the committee is interested in that, we might put it in
I'm
our
not
draft.
sure that would be helpful when you're dealing with different mobility issues.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if they have kilometers on there, most people are able to figure out their own mobility rate and figure out about the amount of time that it might take them to travel that certain kilometers. I'm quite a slow walker, so I don't think I would apply to your minute analogy there.
No, that's good to consider. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you once again for your presentation. And now I believe we will move on to our next item. So next we have, last week we had the orientation for the new members, and we had current members who could attend. So what I would like to open here is an opportunity to ask some follow-up questions, because I know if someone throws you a fire hose of information and then says, do you have any questions? You might need some time to mull over everything that you've just learned. So that's why we have included this on today's agenda. So I will go directly to Jordan as one of our new members. Do you have any follow-up questions from last week's orientation?
No follow-up questions that I'm not currently communicating with. I don't have any suggestions either. I think it was very well done. And luckily I have some experience with other committees, so I know how they run. My only question would be kind of going over for new members who may not have been in any served or any committees or boards, that they kind of might have a review of the way that a committee is run, for instance, and maybe like videos explaining that rather than in print and written, or even going through a mock committee has been helpful in other boards and committees that I've served on with other organizations. So that's my only suggestion. But it's not really for me, it's for anyone who may not have experience with this kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Annie, can you make a note that might be something we can add to next year's or next term's orientation?
Absolutely, Chair. Yeah, through you to the committee member. So I absolutely appreciate the mock council option. I think when we have a few new members joining, sometimes it can be difficult to coordinate, a full-blown kind of mock council so that everybody gets, a real feel for how meetings run. But absolutely take your point there, and it's something that I will write down and will consider for meetings moving forward.
Okay, Michelle, do you have anything to follow up with last week?
I think maybe an introduction of everybody and who they are, and maybe what they do, or just to have an introduction of what of new members, and everybody maybe even at that first meeting indicate like Paul Russell, I'm not sure, I've heard your name, but I don't know what you do, where you are. Same with Councillor Diego Gammon. I don't know what you do, where you are. I know Darren Young because I met him once. I know Melissa Myers. I know Nicole because I know Nicole. I don't know Kristen Hemming. So I don't know Liz, but we did meet the other day, sort of. So does that make sense? I know Corinne because I've seen Corinne so many times. Corinne is the interpreter. She's so lovely. Sorry, that's my husband and my dog coming in from outside.
Well, life happens. Annie, do you have anything we can mention there in terms of introducing ourselves before we all gather for the first time?
Absolutely. And thank you to the committee members through you, Chair. Last week was a bit of an anomaly for me in that I was ill. So I'm sorry. I'm also, my camera keeps turning on and off on me. So I think I'm just gonna let it do its thing here. My apologies. But absolutely, your point is well taken there, Michelle. I think there are certain things that can get, lost in the mix when folks are hopping in to take over when someone's out sick. But I absolutely, we can do more. More like formalized introduction for the committee at the next meeting. We can set some time aside so that everybody, has some time to introduce themselves to one another.
If I can just jump in for a second, Michelle and everybody else, I'm the city councilor representing Lower Sackville, elected about 2.5 years ago, and having a great time. This is a really good community, a really good committee, and I'm thrilled to be here. Not that I'm sucking up.
No, not at all, Councillor.
No.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to do a quick intro as well?
You can if you wish.
Great, thank you. So hello to the new members, and my apologies, I missed the orientation last week because of another meeting commitment. So I'm Kathy. I am the councillor for Waverley, Fall River, Musquodoboit Valley, and newly elected in October of 2020. So my first term, and I have about 40 years working in the nonprofit sector before. Know Jackie really well from her previous work in community services. So working in social enterprise and supporting persons with an intellectual disability. That's been the most of my career before becoming a municipal councillor. That's it, folks.
Okay, thank you. And I will put in a plug for Councillor Diego Gammon's constituency, particularly the Musquodoboit Valley portion of it, my home community, and it is, as a former MLA would say, the beautiful Musquodoboit Valley. So definitely, definitely worth a visit. Yeah. Kristen, do you have anything, or were you able to watch the recording?
I haven't been able to get the recording yet, but I'm going to watch that next week. But I do agree with Michelle. It would be nice to kind of just get a sense of who everyone is. Yeah, because I pretty much know no one. So it would be helpful for me just to kind of know who I'm, sitting in the virtual room with. So thanks.
I think personally, I look forward to in person because, as you say, meeting people for the first time in front of a computer screen is not as helpful as it could be. But yes, Annie, definitely we can work on that. Liz, were you in attendance at that orientation?
I was there last week, yes.
Okay, do you have anything you'd like to bring forward regarding that?
No, not really. No, maybe in the newer members, because it wasn't really a meeting where I'm a new member. I was just kind of sitting back and observing, not really partaking so much. So no, not really.
Okay, thank you. Madam Vice Chair Jackie.
Of course, Mr. Chair, I just, I have I don't know if it's question or comment again. I really enjoyed the orientation session. But I thought as we were going through it, I do remember when I first joined the committee that we all received a manual. Now it was big and it was cumbersome, but it did go through a whole lot of areas that would take some very in-depth time from an orientation perspective. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if that's something that is still being provided to new members, and not that I advocate a whole lot of paper, but I'm just wondering if that is something that's still available to new members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I recall that as well. So Annie, was that distributed?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I can confirm that all new members received the manual for the particular to the committee. Everyone received a digital copy, and I am working with administrative staff to get print copies for those who would prefer to have that in print. But yes, that is a standard that the clerk's office always provides to new members for onboarding.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on to committee members. I do not see any, no added items. So we are on to the date of our next meeting, which is May the 16th, 2022. Annie, have we received any guidance as to when we need to go back to in person, or is that kind of at the committee's decision?
Sorry, this is Liz. If we have any sort of commenting opportunities on that, I'd rather stay online. I don't know if we can do a hybrid if people are wanting to get back in person, but I'd rather stay online.
Yes, I just wasn't sure whether it was up to the committee or if it was a council decision on when in person would resume. So Annie, if you've got anything to.
Yes, for sure. Yes, thank you, Chair. Currently, based on the amount of cases, the direction from the Chief Administrative Officer's office is to meet online, meet virtually wherever possible. Currently, there is not a hybrid option. Unfortunately, the options right now were to meet in person or to meet virtually. But certainly I would work with the chair and vice chair offline to facilitate polling for the committee to gauge the comfort levels of committee members with meeting virtually or in person. And yes, I can certainly undertake that before the next meeting of the committee.
Excellent. Yes, so we will, and well, I as chair and perhaps Jackie, we can have that conversation, and hopefully now that we might be free of snow for a little while, in person can resume at some point. So with that said, I would like a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Committee adjourned at 5:20 p.m.